When we come back, when you're not kind, it can really kick you. All right, well, Martha Coakley's poll numbers are sinking, and if my next guest is right, images like this are certainly not helping. The Massachusetts Senate candidate caught on camera not offering a hand to help a guy who was knocked over by a supporter of hers. This on top of reports that she is not a fan of shaking hands either. Presidential historian Jane Hampton Cook joining me right now. And Jane, you've often reminded me that politicians are supposed to be big old people, right? They're supposed to like people, right?
That's right. Courtesy goes a long way in politics, and you've seen this week that not extending that helping hand really made you wonder, well, what does she do behind closed doors if she can't be helpful in a moment of crisis?
Well, you know, a picture just freezes a moment, Jane, and I've seen this picture many times, and it was awkward. I just wonder, though, you know, maybe she was, you know, confused, busy, distracted, and maybe we're reading too much into it. But what do you think?
Well, I think that's, you know, that's possible. We all have our bad days. We all think, oh, I wish I had done something different. But, you know, courtesy does go a long way. I mean, when Abigail Adams met George Washington the first time, it wasn't his good looks that appealed to her. She said it was his manners, his modesty, his courtesy. So it goes a long ways back in our history that courtesy is a good thing for politicians. George
Washington was a chick magnet. That now I know. All right, so now I'm going to have all these like erudite historians. Oh, he wasn't a chick magnet. All right, you know what's interesting though? I was looking through this in the past, and you're quite right, Jane. It's the little things that people do pick up on, and some of the nasty asides in John Corzine's campaign against his hefty opponent, Christie, New Jersey, really boomeranged on him, didn't they? I mean, because it just looked mean.
That's right. I mean, cheap shots can really cost you. And that the campaign about Christie throwing his weight around really backfired on the Corzine campaign. You know, and Christie responded with, you know, great affability. You know, he was poised about it. He showed good manners about it. He kind of brushed it off and then went back to talking about policy. So, yes, cheap shots can backfire on you. And that's again, where courtesy really does go a long way in politics.
And a sense of humor helps, even if it can sometimes be a little goofy. I was hearkening back, and you were reminding me of the first Gore-Bush debate. Many people were divided over who won on the issues, but on just the likability factor, that famous scene where Al Gore sort of got in George Bush's space, and Bush just sort of gave him that nod. I mean, that registered in some undercurrent, didn't it?
That's right. I mean, it goes to that intrinsic quality of likability. And Bush showed that he was the kind of guy you could sit down and have a laugh with, where Gore was sort of standoffish and you weren't really sure that you wanted to sit down and have a laugh with Gore. So I think, you know, that goes back to that likability and being approachable. People want to feel like they can approach the candidate. And I think that certainly, you know, it was part of that Bush-Gore debate.
And even if you're very, very rich, I mean, I can remember quite well, not that I remember, of course, I was just a babe, when John Kennedy was campaigning in the West Virginia primary for the 1960 Democratic nomination. Going to West Virginia, coal miner country, very poor state at the time, he was an odd duck, to put it mildly, but a lot of the little things he did there registered, didn't they?
That's right. I mean, he helped a woman who had fallen down. He surrounded himself with coal miners and took a risk by giving them a microphone and he allowed them to ask him questions. But it paid off for Kennedy. He showed he was not above the people, but among them. And winning that West Virginia primary sealed the candidacy.
That's right.
for John F. Kennedy.
That's right. Hubert Humphrey was done after that. The other end of the spectrum, you can get a little too brusque, I guess, and Nelson Rockerfeller comes to mind. Of course, this is a rather famous image. But he was not exactly a warm and fuzzy guy, was he?
No, he wasn't. I mean, I think we want our leaders to be firm and resolute, but we don't want them to be terse. We don't want them to be thin-skinned. I think that is a turnoff for voters. And certainly when the Vice President of the United States behaves that way, it's a turnoff to people. So yes, you know, going back to good manners, you know, just as your mother taught you, can go really a long way.
And we're not saying this is what cinches the deal, closes the deal. There are a lot of rude people come present, a lot of very nice people who don't. But it is interesting, and it could be a big factor in some races. Jane, thank you very much. Always good seeing you.
Thank you for having me.
Jane Hampton.